Welcome back to the Normal Sports Show. My name is Kyle Porter. I don't think anything in all of golf engenders the angst of the Ryder Cup. It is the biggest event in golf. It's my favorite event in golf. And every time that it happens, we get all these think pieces and Twitter threads and videos and documentaries and everything else based on sort of the fallout of whatever has happened at the most recent Ryder Cup. This is obviously an insane way to treat an exhibition match in the sport of golf, but it also feels very justified in the moment. And this year's no different. The U.S. lost 15-13 to the Europeans at Bethpage Black. There were a lot of interesting decisions made, a lot of interesting, fascinating things that happened at the Ryder Cup, and I thought that there would be nobody better to talk about this with than Joseph Lamagna of the Fried Egg Golf. He was there. I was there. He is somebody that I have a lot of respect for, whose opinions and takes and thoughts I have a lot of respect for. I reference him often in the Normal Sport newsletter, and so I called him up and we talked about the 5 things that we changed our mind about the most at this Ryder Cup. So not necessarily the things that we thought or enjoyed or loved the most, but just the 5 things that we thought going in that we had our mind changed based on what happened. So we'll get to Joseph here in a second, but first, this episode of the Normal Sports Show is brought to you by ShipSticks. Skip airport stress and costly airline fees with complimentary insurance, real-time tracking, dedicated support, and on-time delivery. Just schedule your shipment, attach your label, and ShipSticks handles the rest, delivering your gear directly to your destination. You can check them out at shipsticks.com/normal-sport for 20% off on your first order. Thank you to ShipSticks for sponsoring not only this show, but also our newsletter this year. This show is also brought to you by Precision Pro and their Titan Series rangefinders. Between the metal shell, waterproof design, and ease of use, you can dominate every approach with Precision Pro Golf. You can check them out at precisionprogolf.com. Thanks to both of those companies for believing in us, believing in this show, believing in what we're doing here at Normal Sport. And I hope you guys enjoy my conversation with Joseph Lamagna. Okay, Joseph Lamagna, one of my favorite people in all of golf to talk golf with, to talk about just anything with. How we doing?
Doing great. Congrats on the show. I'm very excited to be joining. I'm a big supporter of Normal Sport, so let's get into it.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the biggest compliments I can pay you is that you're one of the, well, first of all, you have a big fan in Lawrence Donegan. He's a big fan of your work, apparently. But you're one of my favorite people in golf because I think you're the easiest person that I know to argue with. And what I mean by that is you're the most receptive of arguments against what you're saying. You are not offended by any of it, by anything. Where does that come from? Why is that the case?
I don't know if I have a good answer for you on that, but I think in general, people who talk about everything as if they know everything, it's usually a sign that they don't. And I think a lot of people who are masters at their craft don't talk with that level of certainty. So maybe I'm trying to emulate that in some sense, that there should always be an openness to what you don't know. I don't know that I have a great answer with you on for you on where it comes from, but I appreciate it, and hopefully that's something that I can keep doing moving forward. But that's also not an open invitation for people to just tee off on me in Twitter replies and stuff.
Well, I did disagree with you about something you said in sort of the aftermath of the Ryder Cup. We're gonna get to like our 5 things that we had our minds. Sort of the theme of this whole show is what did you have your mind changed on the most at this Ryder Cup? And you don't want to put too much into 3 days or whatever, but you said something in the aftermath of the Ryder Cup about how so much of the results of these team events is just variance. And I think technically that's true. I guess my question would be, how many times, statistically or otherwise, would it have to would this, like, what happened have to happen for you to believe otherwise?
I don't think I said that.
What did you say?
I think I said people are obsessed with finding reasons for why everything happened, when more of it has to do with the golf itself. Not that it's random, but that I think the way that there was certain narratives forming around Keegan Bradley's captaincy and the decisions that he was making. I did not agree with some of the decisions that Keegan was making, specifically with the English Morikawa pairing that everyone hates and is crucifying Keegan for. But I think we need to keep in perspective how the magnitude of those decisions and how much of an impact it had on the final score at the Ryder Cup. And 2018, like, America used to do the dumbest stuff, playing Phil Mickelson in foursomes at Le Golf National. Like, way bigger issues used to happen on the American side, that I felt like people started to treat Keegan Bradley as if he were Zach Johnson, when he did so many things that were much better in the lead up to this Ryder Cup. So I'm not here to defend Keegan Bradley. I think that pairing in particular was bad, but I do think there is this over obsession with figuring out, taking the scoreboard and then backing in all of these decisions, attributing that to why we're seeing the final result, versus like, Scotty Scheffler played terribly. Like, that's a huge story to come out of this Ryder Cup. And I think we over attribute some of those other non-golf reasons. Not to call them non-golf reasons. They are golf reasons, but you know what I'm saying.
The bed sheets and shampoo. Is that what you're referencing?
Right. And I think it's great that they do that. That's all very important. But I think we get a little obsessed with trying to attach a reason to every result that happens in the Ryder Cup.
Yeah, and that's why it's the best event in sports to yell about, to argue about, because it's played so infrequently that you can chalk it up to anything, and you can kind of be like, well, I don't know, that might be right, And so for I thought Shane Ryan had a really good thing on Twitter just about how, like, hey, if we're seeing these like pretty obvious, like, the thing that I was most offended by, honestly, was not the Morikawa Harris English. It was the switching Scotty and Russell Henley on the first tee.
I'll push back on that, but go ahead.
The fact that you have their caddies changing the order or suggesting that they change the order on Friday night. I don't understand how that, I don't understand how you get to that place. And so Shane Ryan's point was like, hey, if these very obvious things are going wrong, like, what else are they not, like, what other attention to detail are they not giving beneath the surface? Do you disagree
completely
with that?
Fair. No, that's completely fair. Like, I don't think America is a well-oiled machine. Team USA. We can get to.
We'll clip that. We'll clip that
out. That's going to get into one of the things that I changed my mind about. But like, just to zero in for a second on the odds evens thing, is it a good sign that they're flipping in between days? No, that is a major red flag. The odd even advantage was minuscule at Bethpage Black. This was not some like, oh, you gotta have the Bombers on the odds and you have to have either a great iron player or something on the evens. Like, it wasn't that way like at other Ryder Cups historically. So I just thought people are getting a little wrapped up in these tiny little things, which I'm not going to diminish small edges. That's the whole point of the Ryder Cup. You want to stack up as many small edges as possible. But I think maybe some of the frustration came from this narrative forming in media that the Europeans care about the Ryder Cup more. The Americans don't care about it as much, which I agree with. And then as the action was unfolding, people were just so inclined to just hammer that same and like, oh, and here are all the reasons that's true, in a way that I think undermined a lot of the good work that Keegan Bradley actually did. And I still don't think he was a great captain. Yeah.
I think that where I sort of land on a little bit of what you're saying is like carrying, we talk about this, it's interesting at individual, especially at the majors, like you want to care the right amount. You don't want to care too much. You don't want to care too little, whatever. But care alone, or like something being meaningful to you alone, doesn't make you play better golf. It's not like Tommy Fleetwood was awesome because he cares more, right? I think when people say that, it's uninformed and honestly like kind of silly. But I do think that caring more brings about more preparedness, brings about a better plan for your sort of organization as a whole. And so you become, I think one thing that I kind of took away, and we'll get into this as one of my things, is I think Europe's players just seem way more like America's players look so uncomfortable throughout this entire week. Like they just like when they missed putts, they were like badly missed, and they just looked incredibly uncomfortable until maybe late on Sunday. And I think I look at Europe and I'm like, why are they so comfortable? Why are they making all these putts? Some of it is, like I mentioned off the top, it's statistical variance. It's not going to happen every time. But I do think that Europe's machine is so well oiled that their players go out there with full confidence, full trust, and they perform better because of it. I think that part of it for me has become a little bit undeniable.
I completely agree. And I think the only distinction I'm drawing is that I'm here for all of the Team USA has some serious flaws from top to bottom and how they make decisions. Indisputable. What I'm not here for is attributing the scoreboard to all of those reasons when there were a lot of bad golf shots hit. And I think Keegan Bradley actually put a lot of those golfers in position to succeed, and they didn't. And that is a big part of why Team USA lost. So that's the distinction I'm drawing. And I feel like we are having this blow it all up conversation on par with the conversations we had at past Ryder Cups with Zach Johnson or what happened at Le Golf National in 2018 when it's not on that scale.
Yeah, I think the captaincy. So I wrote this in the Normal Sport newsletter on Wednesday, but I think the captaincy on the American side functions ironically too much as a monarchy, and the captaincy on the European side function as like a cabinet, like you would like the American presidency. Like everybody kind of has there's roles for everybody. And so I think what happens on the American side is when you lose, it's like, well, Keegan, like look at all the bad decisions he made. And I think you and I are more on the same page probably than I first thought. So
yeah, again, it's just this will get into one of my things.
Yeah, let's. Do you want to do that? You want to just jump into it?
Sure. I don't have a particular rhyme or reason for some of the ways in which I ordered it, so maybe I'll table that thought for a second. But just to tie a bow on it, like, do I think Keegan Bradley put Scotty Scheffler in a position to succeed? Yeah, I do, and he didn't. And if Scotty Scheffler had played like Scotty Scheffler, no one would be critical of Keegan Bradley. So
yeah,
we can get into the 5 things, but that's more of where I'm coming from on that.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get into the 5 things. This is 5 things that you change your mind on based on this Ryder Cup. They could be small, big, anything in between. I think you and I are hopefully not prone to overreaction. So we don't want to overreact to that, but you did have your mind changed on a few things. What's your first thing that you had your mind changed on?
Well, this will just tie into what we were talking about. How fixable the United States is top to bottom as an organization, as Team USA. I don't see something changing. And I think what was somewhat clarifying from this whole experience, or I don't know, a takeaway for me, illuminating, I don't know that anybody on the US side actually knows golf that well. And that's what it takes, right? It takes somebody at the top who's making decisions with consistency and stability year over year in the Ryder Cup. So you're not just starting from scratch every time. And I actually don't know who on the American side knows every facet of the puzzle, like the analytical side, the emotional side, the preparation side, to be that quarterback year in and year out in a way that Team Europe has figured out. You want to interview these people, like you want to understand who the potential captains could be. I don't trust anybody. I don't trust anybody from the PGA of America to do it. I don't know that we've had good historical Ryder Cup captains to do it. I don't trust the data arm of Team USA. So I think they're pretty far from figuring a lot of this stuff out. They may still win Ryder Cups, but I changed my mind about how fixable the United States side is, and I think it's pretty far from being in a good spot.
I thought you were going to go the other way. I thought you were going to say it's closer to being fixed than people think.
Well, I think these matches are closer, are going to be competitive, but I don't think they're close to getting to where Team Europe is. They start from scratch every time. I think you could get a great captain next time for the USA. I think you could get a complete idiot who makes horrendous decisions. With Team Europe, I think I feel a lot more confident about what you're going to get.
Yeah, and that gets into one of mine. So my first one is the important, I changed my mind on the importance of the captaincy versus the importance of infrastructure. And I sort of referenced that earlier, but I came into this Ryder Cup thinking oh, you got to have a great captain. It's super important. And I think it is, but I was like radicalized over like last weekend to the idea that having an important infrastructure for the 2 years leading in is far more important than having a great captain.
Well, they're related, right? But yes,
for sure they're related. But I think on the European side, you can absorb a mediocre captain because you have great infrastructure. And on the U.S. side, if you have a mediocre to bad captain like Zach Johnson, you have no chance. Like you have zero chance of winning the Ryder Cup. Now, I think what's going to happen is that the U.S. it was close enough, and they've won enough recently that they're like, we just need better. We just need to make more putts. Just need some better players to do a better job. And I just don't think that they believe in like the process, like the 2-year process of the whole thing. I was talking to one European official on Sunday, and he was talking about how like Europe has people that are like their full-time job is the Ryder Cup. They like to think about the Ryder Cup every single day and to talk to the captain, whoever it is, whether it's Luke Donald, Thomas Bjorn, Padraig Harrington, to talk to that person every single day. To talk to them about what's the stats team saying, what's the content team saying, what are all these sort of smaller teams like feeding up to this cabinet of people. And I just think that is I was just radicalized to like how important that part of all of this is. And I agree. I agree with you. I don't think the US I don't think they even care to build all that.
I'm with you. I think it does bear mentioning that some of the travel issues, like the Team USA has done better on that. They kind of figure these things out piece by piece, but they don't actually have the person who understands all of this stuff. They're just reacting to, oh, okay, we traveled too late to Rome last time. Like, let's play the Procore Championship, which was good, right? And let's get the pairings at the Procore Championship to reflect some of the potential pairings at the Ryder Cup. Good. Like, doing better with the golf ball make and model, doing better with communication. You're probably going to play with this guy. You might also play with this guy. Like, that's kind of where I'm coming from on trying to sort of defend Keegan on some of that some of those issues were solved and the communication does seem to be much better. But again, they're just going to start from scratch the next time. And the next captain could mess all of that up because I don't think they have anybody at the top who has a good overview of how much all of this stuff matters and why you need to put particular pieces in place.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think that's a bummer. You know, I was thinking about, I went back and researched how did Team USA basketball become so, like they obviously had the dream team in 92 and they were dominant in the 90s and then they fell off in the early 2000s. They had they finished like 6th at the Worlds. They lost to just a string of teams that you're like, what are we doing? Like we have the best players in the world and we're like finishing 6th at the World Championships. And then Jerry Colangelo came in to Team USA basketball and just reset everything and built a culture and built a program really that was dominant for the next 12, 16 years. And he's out of that now. And so it's a little bit different, but I wish the US would do that on the golf side. I think it's hard because, they're doing it a little bit with this USGA initiative, like Team USA type stuff, but you've got all these different organizations. And again, the PGA of America thing is like, okay, why do they even care about any of this? They made $200 million or whatever the number is at Bethpage. Like what's the incentive to care about the US becoming 5% better at playing the Ryder Cup?
I don't think that there is one. The only part I'll disagree with you on is that it's a bummer. I think it's actually way more fun that we get complete. If we get a complete idiot mixed in every 4 to 6 whatever Ryder Cups, that's way more fun than them figuring this thing out. So I'll push back on that.
Yeah, it is. Truly, it is, and it provides you and I with just months of content. So yeah, maybe you're right. I don't know. As somebody that loves golf and loves, the way that the Europeans dominate the process and dominate like with excellence, it bums me out that the US isn't better. Okay, what's your second thing?
Again, I don't have a real reason for why they're ordered the way they are, so I'll pick one that is categorized similarly. I changed my mind a little bit on what makes a good captain, and at least 2 characteristics among the many that are important for a captain. One, total buy-in. And Luke Donald clearly is fully bought into this thing. You mentioned him changing the betting so that their team could sleep better. I mean, he's thinking through every detail, and I think that's really important. The one piece of this that I hadn't considered until this week, really, and on our pod, the Fried Egg Pod, Johnson Wagner and Andy Johnson were talking about this. They think something that potentially might make a good captain is a player who got everything out of their game while they were a player. That Luke Donald was very analytically driven, wasn't the best driver of the golf ball, wasn't the most physically gifted, but he got a lot out of his game. And I don't think it's unreasonable to extend that to the captaincy and their openness to information, probably just savvier with the way they think about the game. And so, I think about somebody like Webb Simpson, potentially. I don't necessarily want to vouch for Webb because never heard him talk about how he would captain necessarily, but he kind of fits that mold as a very good player. Wasn't a long hitter, wasn't the most, physical. He doesn't look like Dustin Johnson. His performance didn't come from his athleticism, but he worked his way around a golf course. He's had some success in Ryder Cups. Like, I actually think about that type of person who, if assuming he would be very bought in, that might be the prototype. Not that there's one definition, but that might be a prototype of somebody who kind of makes for a good captain.
Isn't the argument against that Zach Johnson?
Yeah, I don't think it's one size fits all. Believe me. Zach Johnson's also not very smart. Let's just be honest.
I don't think anybody got more out of it. I mean, won the Masters, won the Open, won 12 times on the PGA Tour, and then was just a disaster. I thought his captaincy was just, I thought it was awful, honestly. And I didn't probably voice that as much at the time because I don't know. It was horrendous. It was, very bad.
I believe he used the word strategery at one point, and if somebody ever uses that word, they automatically should be disqualified from being a Ryder Cup captain.
Yeah. Yes. Well, it's interesting, like how much, in retrospect, I was complimentary of Seth Waugh for picking for going outside the box and taking Keegan Bradley. I think now, in retrospect, that was wrong. I was wrong to say that because it's such if you want, and especially on, you could argue this is even more true on the US side because they don't have that infrastructure. It's just so much time, effort, and energy to put into it. And I think Keegan, I came away from this. Actually, this is my second one. I think way differently about Keegan Bradley now than I did probably a year ago. And not necessarily certainly not because he was a great captain, but I just thought he handled everything like really well, like the whole thing. And I thought he did without the infrastructure that I think should be in place. I thought he did like the best he could. Was he perfect? No. Were there decisions that he made that I'm sure he would like to have back? Absolutely. But I just was like really impressed from up close and far away by the way he carried himself, the way he handled the role, the way he talked about the Ryder Cup, like the whole thing I just thought was super impressive. And I think you could easily say like Zach Johnson lost the US 2 Ryder Cups because Keegan was the captain because he didn't get picked in Rome. But I come away from this whole Ryder Cup experience with a newfound respect for Keegan Bradley.
I totally agree with you. And that's, I think, part of what's motivating the soft defense of some of Keegan Bradley and everyone going to like, oh my goodness, they did the Morikawa English pairing again, and they flipped on the odds and evens. Like, let's just zoom out a little bit and take a look at all of the decisions that go into being a captain. And I think Keegan Bradley overwhelmingly handled most of it well. What is clearly lacking is some of the strategic information, some of the data analysis, and the communication cycle to get that to Keegan so he understands it, understands why Morikawa English is a bad pairing. Like that's what's missing. It's not, I just feel like it's been blown way out of proportion that Keegan was some kind of disaster. And that's not the case in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. What did you think about his comment on the course setup that he said he should have listened to his intuition more?
The course setup stuff, again, we're talking about a golf course and team, the composition of each team. The golf course isn't super neutral. It's a very distance-oriented golf course, but the teams were pretty evenly matched from a skill set standpoint coming in. I think people are going way too far with this course setup thing. Where I would be critical of Keegan is that, yeah, you probably want to set it up to be a little bit more of an accuracy test with thicker rough, considering one of your best players is Scotty Scheffler, and that's where he gets a lot of his advantage, and you have some other highly accurate drivers of the golf ball that you were going to lean on. But Kyle, like, no one's talking about the fact that Cameron Young balled out for the American team and was playing from the rough all the time. It's not like the United States had a bunch of accurate drivers of the golf ball and Europe were sprayers and they set it up this way. So I just think that's being blown way, way out of proportion. Would I set it up a little bit differently and lean more into Scotty Scheffler's strengths, considering I'm going to use him 5 matches? Sure. But what do people think that was worth? Do people think that was worth 10% win probability of the Ryder Cup? Like, absolutely not even close.
Well, but I thought the language that he used in the after, for people that didn't see it, he was asked about, I think by Andy, about course setup, and he said, I made a mistake there. I should have listened to my intuition more. And so one of my issues with Keegan really for the last 2 or 3 months was he seemed a little resistant to some of the statistical stuff. I asked him about what goes into selecting captain's picks, or what data do you look at when you're selecting captain's picks. And I didn't expect to get some full-fledged, here's everything answer, but he said, he was kind of joking, and he said, well, usually just like who shoots the lowest scores at these tournaments. And you're like, okay, like he was kind of like making fun of, I think, like the sort of deeper statistical analysis type stuff, and trying to be funny in the process. But it made me a little leery of the way how receptive he was going to be throughout this Ryder Cup to the stats. But then in the post Ryder Cup presser, he said, yeah, I should have listened to my intuition more, implying that the statistics said that they should have set the course up the way that they did, and it didn't work out. Is that the way that you read that comment?
Yeah, 2 things on that. One, he made some sort of mention to that's the way things have worked for them historically, which I think harkens back to Hazeltine, which is wild that you might try and base your strategy off the 2016 Ryder Cup. That's insane.
But it seemed like he was saying that that's what the data guys were saying.
And so 2, and I want to be cautious in how I say this because I don't know everything that happens behind the scenes. I think there are real questions to be asked of the information that Keegan Bradley is getting, and not just the information he's getting, but how it's being delivered. Communication is a massive part of the job of whoever is doing data analysis for a professional golfer. Getting buy-in is part of your job. It doesn't matter what kind of models you're building. If you're not able to talk to Keegan Bradley as a professional golfer, meet him where he is and communicate why certain things are important. So if he's saying, I just care about the guys who are shooting the lowest scores or something, like, it is your job as whoever's consulting Keegan to change his mind about that, to give him good information, to get buy-in from him. Like, that's part of your job. So I don't know where the data team on the United States is failing, but to me, it suggests they're failing on multiple fronts, not just the information that they're providing him, but also how they're communicating it.
Yeah. Okay. What's your third one?
Scotty Scheffler. A couple pieces to this one. One, how I think about Scotty Scheffler as a golfer a little bit, but I thought coming into the week, he had potential to be the best American Ryder Cup player of the modern era, right? Because it's not a high bar. Phil Mickelson, Tiger Woods, not great in Ryder Cups. And once you get past those names, who in the 21st century was, a great Ryder Cup player? I thought there was a void there that Scotty Scheffler could fill, and there's no reason why he shouldn't be able to do it. He'd be good in any of the formats. So it's a very disappointing week, and I think a little bit less of Scotty Scheffler, especially moving forward in Ryder Cups, not in the Masters, but in Ryder Cups, and maybe he's a little uncomfortable with the format. But 2, related to that, I think Ryder Cup should be a bigger part of players' legacies. And Scotty Scheffler's shortcoming in this Ryder Cup, I do think should inform the way that we think about professional golfers, because these golfers are so routine oriented and get comfortable with 72 hole stroke play. And I think your ability to adapt to other formats should be part of how we look at you as a professional golfer.
Yeah, my Scotty take is honestly kind of a Rory and Rahm take, because they've been able to transfer what they do well in stroke play into the Ryder Cup. And I think that's harder, as we've seen with Scotty, it's harder than they make it look. And what they've done, what Rory and Rahm have done, and Fleetwood also, but Fleetwood's not the stroke play player that, like, he's not the out on the regular tour player that those guys are. And I think what those guys have done is remarkable. Like, I really do. And I think they don't maybe get enough credit for how they have been able to adapt to, because it's so different. And I think Scotty, personality wise, it makes some sense why he maybe doesn't thrive as much. He's such a I don't know. He is such a competitor on the one hand. On the other hand, I think that he loves his own process and trusts his own process. And so it's probably a little bit difficult for him to kind of work in with like a teammate or whatever. But like, him and Henley were awesome at the President's Cup, and he was awesome in 2021 with Bryson at Whistling Straits. So I don't totally understand it, I guess. But when I think of Scotty, I think about, on the flip side, like how amazing Rory and Rahm have been, not just this year, but throughout the last 6 to 8 years. For Rory, 16 years. It's been really impressive.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect from Scotty going forward in Ryder Cups. Like, I still would have expectations that he's going to be the best golfer. If you told me the Ryder Cup was 2 weeks from now, like, I'd have as high of expectations for Scotty Scheffler as anybody else in the field. But I still think you have to downgrade him just a little bit, because there's this outside chance, or I don't know how outside it is, that he's going to get a little uncomfortable in that environment. And I do think the connection to Tiger Woods is appropriate. I think there is something to the best American golfers of the 21st century who dominate in 72 hole stroke play having issues in the Ryder Cup. I don't think it's overreactive to draw some level of connection there.
What's the through line? What is the connection?
I think some level of discomfort in a format that's different and more beyond your control than the other weeks of the year.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that Scotty Scheffler's record is going to be terrible going forward, but he's not playing like the Scotty Scheffler that we are accustomed to seeing. Like, he was so far from that this past week on a setup that he should have been fine on. Like, it wasn't like it was crazy windy and fluky and there was a lot of water and variance. Like, he just straight up didn't play anywhere near the level of a lot of golfers that he's better than. So, and
I don't think it's a pressure thing. I had Scotty also, so we can keep talking about him. He was my third one. I don't think it's a pressure thing. I don't think, like, he clearly cares. I mean, he cried in Rome. He was very emotional after this Ryder Cup also. Max Homa went on the No Line Up podcast on Friday, or I don't know, sometime, and just talked about how those weeks are really difficult, because you don't get, if you're very routine oriented, you just don't get your regular stuff, and like, you don't get your regular practice. And I'm curious about how it seems like Scotty is not very, I know Brendan and Andy joke about the fair police or whatever, but like, he doesn't seem very adaptable to different situations. Like, he seems like a creature of habit, a creature of his own routine, a product of his own routine, which is like the best in the world. But I think when you get him outside of that, like, one of your skills as an athlete has to be able to adapt to different environments. And he hasn't done that. He didn't do it in Rome, didn't do it here. He did at Whistling Straits, which is interesting because he wasn't the player then that he is now. Him and Bryson were really good there that week. So I'm with you. I think about Scotty differently. I think when you're that level, every big event shifts the narrative, or should shift. It's fair for it to shift the narrative a little bit, because you're under such a microscope. And he, 1 and 4 is just that's awful. Like, it's a disaster.
I agree with you. I just don't want to overstate it. Scotty Scheffler came out of a jail cell and played good golf. His routine wasn't the same that morning. Yeah. Like, I don't think it's necessarily fair to say he can't adapt to anything, but clearly something, I think, gets him a little bit out of his rhythm when he can't control the variables to the same level that he can. And he's very routine oriented, right? Talks about starting all of his warm-up sessions with his grip and like super focused on his routine. So I think there is something to it.
One thing that bothered me, or that has bothered me in the aftermath, is like, oh, well, those guys just this was a talking point from European media a lot, is like, oh, well, they're just here for money and like they don't care. And like, man, I think it's like such a fallacy. Like, do I think that the Ryder Cup, caring about the Ryder Cup, is as ingrained on the US side from a young age as it is on the European side? No, of course not. Like, I don't think anybody thinks that. But to say that Scotty Scheffler and Sam Burns and Russell Henley and even Cantlay and Xander don't care about winning the Ryder Cup, and they're just there to like on a business trip, I just think is like, I think that's so dumb.
I think that talking point is a little tired, that the Europeans care about it so much and it's in their blood and the Americans don't care about it. I think there could be a little bit to it and getting yourself up for it, and the scarcity of it being every 2 years versus the Americans. That's been a new take I've seen people circulating.
President's Cup.
Johnson Wagner had it. Yeah, Luke Curtinine had it. Like, maybe the President's Cup is detracting from Ryder Cup performance. I think there's something to that potentially, but I don't think there's a lack of care, and I certainly don't think the charitable stipend that they've all been given, the $500,000, is responsible for the
that was
scoreboard.
Insane. Like that whole, like that was like 2 days of stuff. And Luke Donald talked about it at his opening ceremony speech. I was like, get this out of here. Like, what are we doing? Okay, what's your fourth one?
My fourth one is how much of a clown show the PGA of America is.
Oh gosh.
I think it absolutely needs to be said. That's one of the biggest takeaways coming out of this. So many different angles to this one. Having an MC starting the FU Rory chant was bad enough. I think there should have been a statement. I don't know how much I care about statements in general and press releases. It can be overdone and cheesy, but I think at some point when the crowd got way out of control, there did need to be a statement from the PGA of America. Ideally on Sunday morning. Saturday afternoon was a disaster. I was with that Rory group where most of the comments were coming from. It was terrible. And there should have been something from the PGA of America on Sunday morning, like reminding what the spirit of the event is and that it's not going to be tolerated. I even think there should have been something from Keegan Bradley on that, to be completely honest, but we'll leave that aside. There was nothing to lower the temperature throughout the week. The president, Don Rea, not knowing what was said to Rory when he was interviewed about it and asked about it is crazy to me. He's still posting. I think he's posting on LinkedIn right now about how like they're, basically downplaying his responsibility in the whole thing. And I'm not going to get too into this, but like I also think PGA Frisco, that whole project is not going to age well. And you just zoom out a little bit and think to yourself, like, who at the PGA of America has the golf IQ to avoid some of these issues in the future? And where is that leadership coming from? I think it's very reasonable to question the leadership at the PGA of America.
What do you mean the PGA Frisco is not going to age that well? What does that mean?
I mean, it's a massive project that I think will go down as a failure. That I don't think the golf course is anywhere near.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and like, you had to relocate everyone to Frisco, like huge investment. And then when they had the women's PGA there, they had to reroute the golf course because there wasn't enough infrastructure around the 18th hole. There wasn't enough room for infrastructure for that to be the closing hole. Like on a golf course, you started with a blank canvas. I realize I'm talking about a niche topic here compared to the Ryder Cup, but like, where is the golf IQ that these issues kind of keep resurfacing with the PGA of America in contrast to the other governing bodies?
Well, okay. I have to be careful here. I have a very good relationship with the PGA of America. I've done some work with them and for them and all these other things. I think that one of the problems is these events are hard to put on, right? They're very complex. They're very involved. And I think when you have such a rotating cast of characters at the top with the CEO and the president, like all these, you think about the other governing bodies in golf, like the Masters chairman doesn't change every 2 years, right? What's the USGA schedule on? They don't do it every, you're in that position for a while, right?
Yeah, I don't know the exact cadence, but it's not every 2 years. Yeah,
Martin Slumbers just left the RNA after whatever, 9, 10, 11 years. So I think there's this I honestly, like, the PGA of America's whatever issues you might think they have, I think are like they sort of play out in the Ryder Cup team as well, where it's like, oh, we're just going to rotate this thing, but not really have like a playbook for this is how you do things. And so your next person up might be good, or they might not be good. Like, that to me is, it's problematic. I mean, do you think there's a lot of talk, a lot of rumors about the PGA of America eventually selling the Ryder Cup and offloading it to a different organization? Do you think that's on the table? Like, what are your thoughts around that?
I don't have enough information to have insight. What I will say is I do not want the PGA Tour to have it. And I think that's actually really important that the PGA Tour does not end up with the Ryder Cup for a number of reasons, but one of them being monopolistic reasons. And that the Ryder Cup, part of the reason a lot of golfers didn't want to go to LIV was access to major championships and potentially a spot on the Ryder Cup. And one of the things that was dangled over them was the OWGR and the way that operates, and that if you're out of that system, you may not be able to get OWGR points, get into majors. The same thing could be done on the Ryder Cup when you have the PGA Tour, a direct competitor to LIV. Like, they don't let LIV golfers in the President's Cup. I'm not saying they'd ban LIV golfers from the Ryder Cup, but I actually think it's important that we have a more competitive environment than having another massive tentpole event under the PGA Tour's umbrella versus it being a more neutral body. But I do think that's really important, actually, that the PGA Tour doesn't wind up with it.
Yeah, and I think I might have misspoke there about the PGA of America structure. Seth Wall was what was his role? Was he the CEO?
Thank you. I believe he was considered. I believe he was called a CEO. I don't know if there's a bunch. There's CEO and there's a president. And Derek Sprague.
Yeah, so I think I don't think it's the CEO that rolls over every 2 years. I do think it's the president. So I might have misspoke about how, like, everyone at the top of the structure rolls over. But regardless,
and like, some of these issues I think are fine for them to happen. Just take accountability for them. Like that. Yeah. That's the main thing that I think they should have come out and said, this was a mistake. We can't have this happen again. Like, I just think there needs to be some level of accountability. I'm not even saying people need to get fired, though. There's probably reasonable conversations about that, but I think there just needs to be some level of accountability that things got out of control.
Yeah, totally. That was my fourth one. Well, sort of. My fourth one was I changed my mind on this event being played in the United States. And not that I think it should be played elsewhere, to be clear, but I changed the way that I view the Ryder Cup in the US. I was at 2016 at Hazeltine. It changed my career. It was the best week of my professional career. And I know Sully's talked about that also. It was extraordinary. I mean, it was amazing. And there was some bad stuff there. Like some things that were said that I was very up close to, that it was like, whoa, like this is bad. 2021 at Whistling Straits was less raucous. It was less enthusiastic, but it was also less vile. It wasn't, it was, nothing was said that shouldn't have been said. Some of that was, you might argue, like there weren't as many people in attendance or whatever. And maybe this is an overreaction to just like a New York crowd or whatever, but I fear, I don't know that I'm like looking forward to what's going to take place in Hazeltine in 2029. And it's not good. And people have seen it. One thing that was interesting was everybody that was there was kind of hesitant to repeat some of the things that they heard on podcasts or on whatever. But since that time, videos have come out and was like, hey, here it is. Like, here's what we heard. And it's horrible. I mean, it's so bad. And so I think people have started to view this event on the American side as like, hey, we can say whatever we want. And those stupid Europeans, we're going to like rile them up and we're going to put it on camera. And I just think that is, I don't want to be a part of that. The word that was going around the media center on Saturday and Sunday was just sadness. Like, it was just sad. And that sounds like maybe silly or whatever, but that's not like why you and I got into covering golf. And that's not what we love about golf. And that's not what probably anybody listening to this show or following Fried Egg loves about golf. It's just this whatever percentage, but it's still a problem. And I think I have shifted thinking, or I've shifted how I think about Ryder Cups in the United States. And I hate that. Like, I wish that wasn't the case, but I'm afraid it is the case going forward.
Yeah, I don't want to be too down and negative on it but it was really gross. And I think the media is not overstating it or pearl clutching. And if you had a little kid with you in attendance, you would not have wanted, like, and this is an event that has turned a lot of little kids into golf fans. Like John Rahm talks about going to the Ryder Cup as a kid, and that's what made him want to play in a Ryder Cup someday. So I do think it's important, and you would not have wanted a little kid to hear any of that. But to spin it a little bit in terms of like, let's think about solutions versus just complain about what happened. Like, I think there are practical things they could probably do to mitigate some of it, specifically around infrastructure and collection points, because the bad stuff's being yelled where fans are 8 to 10 rows deep and unaccountable because they can run from the police. Like that's what was happening. Like the 6th tee box was where I heard most of the worst stuff. So I actually think there is a way that you could sort of mitigate some of that. I think alcohol should be evaluated. What drinks get served, right? Like considering hard alcohol and people having a bunch of cocktails is different than people having a bunch of seltzers. Like some of that can probably be looked at. And the last piece I'll throw out there is gambling, which is not going to be addressed anytime soon. But I think gambling is probably playing a fairly significant role in some of these outbursts, that someone spends $1,000 on a Ryder Cup ticket and then, maybe bets $3,000 on the United States to win the Ryder Cup, and they're watching the U.S. lose and they're angry and they have nothing to lose by yelling at Rory McIlroy, and they're going to do it. I actually think that's probably reasonable to scrutinize as well.
Yeah, you and I are like-minded on the gambling stuff. It's not good. There was a post from I think it was it was Ryder Cup USA on Twitter about, and they did this a bunch because they're, partnered with DraftKings, and it was like Cam Young -175 in his Sunday, and it's like, what are we doing? Like this is like, it just felt like, again, a PGA and I don't blame the PGA of America. Like they're making business decisions on all of this. Like they're trying to make the most money possible for their organization for this week. Like I do not begrudge you for that. But it leads to some just like stuff that if I was in charge of Team USA, I just wouldn't. I don't know. It's just hard to imagine like Europe doing that, and not that the US should always copy or emulate what Europe does at all, but some of that stuff bummed me out. The funniest thing I heard, Joseph, was at the opening ceremony, Keegan was talking about how he was at 99 at Brookline and he was on his dad's shoulders, and he said Justin Rose made the putt. It was Justin Leonard. But one of my buddies, Patrick McDonald at CBS Sports, came up and was like, why? He was like, I know he said this, but why was a 13-year-old on his dad's shoulder?
That's very reasonable to ask.
He was like, forget the Justin Rose stuff. I want to know why the 13-year-old had climbed on his dad's shoulders. What did you think about? We don't need to go deep on this, but Paul Azinger came out on, I think he was on Colton Ost's podcast, maybe Subpar, talking about how he was disappointed in Rory and some of those guys for the way they reacted to what was said to them, and Rory specifically yelling, F you, F you, F you to all these different fans throughout the weekend. Do you agree with Azinger? What was your thoughts around that?
Maybe I'll fence it a little bit here. I'm not trying to, but do I think that Rory should have pointed at the crowd and mouthed F you, F you, F you after the putt on 17 with Shane Lowry? Like, no, in a perfect world, I don't think he should do that. And I would imagine that he himself doesn't think he should have done that. But after being in that group all day and hearing what was being said, I think those players have a long leash in terms of the way that they should have felt like they could respond. And I also just in general have a deference to professional athletes doing whatever they need to do to get the best out of themselves. I am an unabashed Novak Djokovic fan. I think he is one of the coolest, fiercest competitors in the world. And sometimes when he's interacting with the crowd, you don't watch it and think to yourself, well, that's a model citizen. Like, he looks like a punk at times, but I know that he is summoning something in himself to bring out his best tennis. And if we want to watch the best tennis players in the world, we want to watch the best golfers in the world, I have a little bit of a hard time trying to tell them to tamp down what makes them great. And if that's what brings out Rory's best golf, go for it. If you want to scrutinize him for it and think he looks like a jerk doing that, I understand. And I don't think he should do the FU, especially to a grandstand that wasn't necessarily chanting anything at him, right? It's not like that incidents happened on the 17th green and that's why he was doing it. I think it was a general frustration. So yeah, it's not a great look, but personally, I can excuse, short of like a physical altercation with a fan, I can excuse pretty much anything a player was going to do in that environment, because what they were hearing was truly sickening.
Yeah, it's hard. I struggle with it because, we were talking about, kids being out there, and I'm like, gosh, like, Rory's met my kids, and like, it was such a cool interaction. And then to put my kid, like if me and my kid are at the 17th green watching, and my 9-year-old is like, Dad, what did he say? And you're like thank you. That's a tough one. I do wonder what he would say in like a cool, like, I'm surely he'll be asked about it at some point. And I wonder if he would justify it or defend it, or, cause that was the most, we've seen him curse at Ryder Cups. We've seen him be a complete maniac at Ryder Cups. He told me what he said in the parking lot in Rome, and it was a lot worse than that. It was not good, but it was the most sort of in your face he's been, and like not caring about what is being said around anybody that he's ever been at a Ryder Cup. And so that's the part where I'm like, I think it's a little tough for him to come in and say like, hey, this has no place in golf. Like, this is what Azinger said. And then to turn around and be like, it's certainly more justifiable for him because it's provoked. It's something that he's reacting to. It's not like he's running out there and, unprovoked and saying it, but I struggle with it a little bit. And I'm curious about what his reaction, after all this is to having done that.
Yeah, I think he would probably want to take it back. Like that would be my guess. I'm not saying it was a good look. I don't know, being in the group the whole day and the emotions that Shane and Rory both had to be feeling.
Yeah.
I can't really imagine what that would have felt like. And then to also have to get yourself to a point where you could physically perform and have that fire within you. Because if you just tamed yourself down, they might have been more polite, but they also might have lost the match and not played as good at golf. Like, Rory was firing himself up. So yeah, I guess I'm excusing it to an extent, but I understand your perspective, and I'm sure that he probably would like to have that one back.
Yeah. Okay. Last one, number 5.
I do believe that this is the week that Cameron Young kind of became a star.
This is my number 5 also.
I have a long-standing position that Cameron Young is a top 5 level talent in the world, so I will declare my bias there. But at this point, I do believe he's basically the 5th or 6th best golfer in the world right now. Going into the FedEx Cup playoffs, I'd said that I would take him 3rd. It would be Scotty, Rory, then Cameron for me, for PGA Tour players.
What did he finish in at Tour Championship?
High. I
like
wouldn't
top
even put
8 or something.
I want to say he finished 4th, but let me check. Yeah, he finished tied for 4th.
Okay.
I do think Tommy Fleetwood is a better golfer on the PGA Tour right now. So say Cameron's 4th. Once you add in live guys, yeah, Bryson and John Rahm are right in there, probably better than he is. So you're talking like 5th, 6th best player in the world. I believe that's where he is right now. And going into next year, you talk about players who can win a major championship. I think he's absolutely in that top 10. So it's hard to say exactly where he is, but his ceiling's really high. How many golfers could have put on the performance that Cameron did this past weekend? He might still be a little bit inconsistent, and I think that's something that he's going to have to work on. But tell you what, now that he's a great putter, he stepped up into the cauldron in front of home fans against the best players in the world, like partnered with Bryson, partnered with JT, went off first on Sunday and took down Rose. If people haven't seen that match, you got to go look up the extended highlights on YouTube, because Cameron was excellent. And I do believe that he is kind of a true American star at this point.
Yeah. This was my fifth one also. So we can close with this. I was not on the Cam Young bandwagon. And I know you know that because you kept all the receipts from everybody, including my 9-year-old who jumped off.
Your 9-year-old's a coward. Your 9-year-old's a coward.
For sure. I'll tell him you said that. 2 questions. One, where did your where did all this come from for you? Like, where did it start? Like your like the way that you think about Cam Young. And then 2, is there a comp in another sport that you think of when you think of Cam Young?
Yeah. So where did it come from? It came from 2 places. One that I'm not sure about, one that I know. One is that he was an excellent ball striker, and he was consistently putting himself in contention in the biggest golf tournaments in the world, and then the putter would let him down. Like Southern Hills, he had a real chance of winning. St. Andrews had a real chance of winning. The one that people probably forget about a little bit is Liverpool, where Brian Harmon won. Cam Young was in the final group and shredded that field, tee to green, through 3 days. He was losing so many strokes putting that had he just putt okay, like he'd have been right up there with Brian Harmon, maybe even ahead of him. I'd have to go look at the numbers.
He lost a stroke putting that week, or 4 total, a stroke per round.
So, I mean, now he's a legitimately great putter. He finished top 10 this year in strokes gained putting. So it was always that if he figures out the putting, he's going to be one of the best players in the world. And the other part I'm not as sure about is something just looked technically proficient about Cameron Young, which is a really dangerous path to go down, and you don't want to go too far down that path. But his dad's a PGA pro. The technique always looked good, so it didn't look like there was some jerky motion that was keeping him from being a good putter, keeping him from having good short game. So I just believed that it could happen. So I guess some combination of those things is where I came from on the Cam Young enthusiasm. And then to compare him to another player, I think the best comp is Justin Herbert, the quarterback for the Chargers, who has it, looks the part, has always kind of been let down by things that are outside of his control. Putting is within Cameron Young's control, so it's not a perfect comp. But I think Justin Herbert's always kind of been that. People who are really into stats, people who like to bet, like they have a lot of respect for Justin Herbert, but the performance wasn't always there. Cameron Young was the same type of golfer or athlete, and I think it's finally starting to materialize. So yeah, that would be the comp I can come up with off the top of my head. I don't know if I have another one in a different sport.
No, I like that one. Yeah, his putting was really good this year, and obviously got his first win. I think my issue with Cam Young, I mean, obviously he's been really good at major championships, not consistently, but off and on. He's played very well at the majors. He finished T9 at the 2024 Masters, like you said, T8 at the 2023 Open, T4 at the US Open this year. He's got a bunch of top 10s at majors. My issue was always like he seemed joyless. Like his disposition was just nothing. And that's just, it's not compelling to me. I tend to gravitate toward the Tommy Fleetwoods, the Rorys, I'm trying to think of who else. Honestly, a lot of the European guys, where it seems like there's like real joy there over the game. And I think that I loved not only his performance. His performance was obviously extraordinary at the Ryder Cup, but honestly, like the fist pump that he gave on 18 when he made that putt to beat Justin Rose was awesome. Like it was really cool, and it made me glad for him. It made me excited about rooting for him, and I'm curious to see, like, I don't know if you're a big believer in like jumping the Ryder Cup as a jumping off point, or anything in the fall as a jumping off point for players, but I'm curious to see if it like opens him up a little bit and brings him out of his shell at all. I tend to think no, but maybe, and I'm curious to see if he's like easier to root for going forward by letting more people in.
I think it can be a jumping off point. I think it gives you confidence that you've stood in that ring with the best in the world and took him down. So I could easily see it being a legitimate jumping off point. 2 quick things on that. one, to the joyless point, I think joyless is a little too far, and that Cam's personality has been somebody who wants to be really good at golf and is really driven and focused on being good at golf and isn't thirsty looking for the camera. But I have heard that he gets down on himself in a way that probably has hurt his game in the past. So I think there could be some merit to what you're saying.
Yeah.
Only other point on that, and I'm writing a big thing on Cameron Young and a lot of the scenes from the week. I followed him pretty much the entire Ryder Cup, and I rarely get emotional about anything, let alone something in golf. Watching his parents watch him, and his dad, PGA professional, soft-spoken, like seems like a nice guy. I've never talked to him, but keeps to himself, hat on, glasses, longtime PGA pro at Sleepy Hollow. Watching him like fist pump and let out a big like "Let's go, Cam" after Cam stuck it to a foot playing with Bryson in his first ever foursomes match. I was standing right next to him when he did it, and it was one of the coolest things I've ever seen in golf. Like, imagine watching your son do that and him standing up in the pressure. It was so freaking cool, and I think Cameron gave a lot of people reasons to cheer for him going into next year.
I'm just trying to get my son to run the right play on our flag football team. So
is it the same son who has paper hands when it comes to Cameron Young?
No, it's the older one. He's our quarterback. Okay. The younger one is our center, so he just hikes the ball. That's actually one of the cool things. I was talking to Jason Page, who's our illustrator, and everybody got to meet last week, which was cool. But he said one of his favorite parts of the Ryder Cup was walking with Rory and Scotty and watching their parents watch them. And those guys are obviously more accomplished than Cam Young, but just
right now.
For now, I do want to end with a whose career will be better. But he said that was like it made him emotional, and I thought that was cool because he doesn't have kids, you don't have kids, and it is as a dad, it is a very emotional thing to see your kid succeed. And it's just one of the Ryder Cup is so unique. It's so meaningful in so many different ways, and that is certainly one of them. Okay, last question. Better career from here forward: Cam Young, Colin Morikawa.
Cam Young.
Is it close?
Yeah, I mean it's reasonably close. I think the harder one for me would be Victor Hovland because I just have a ton of admiration for Victor's game, but I think Cameron Young, being the most complete player he is right now, I would take his major results next year over Colin's.
But I mean, from now until
I know.
Yeah, until the end of
I'd still take it, but probably a little less certain of that. But
Cam Young or JT?
Cam Young.
JT's a little older.
That one I don't have to think about.
JT or Morikawa?
Kind of hard. I would take Colin. I don't have a lot of confidence in what JT brings to the table these days.
It's interesting that you talked about Cam Young's proficiency with his swing for two reasons. One, I kind of feel that about JT outside of driver. Obviously, drivers.
Yeah, he's a good quarterback except throwing the ball.
It's fair. His iron play just always looks so like perfect to me. Like his change of speeds and all that stuff. But the more interesting reason is because you're the one that one time told me that you should trust athletes who don't look good doing it.
Yeah.
And I thought that was such a it's such good advice. And I think we were talking about Scotty or something because it's different in golf because your score is your score, but especially in other sports like baseball, football, basketball, if you don't look good, then you're starting at a disadvantage. Like coaches and scouts and whatever, like you're just predisposed to being picked against. And so guys that don't look good, you should trust them because they have overcome not only like beating everybody, but also like what other evaluators have thought about them.
Yep, that's a Daryl Morey lesson that I think is really intelligent. Nikola Jokic comes to mind, right? Doesn't necessarily look the part, but you can't penalize him for not looking. I think maybe with Cameron, there was a piece of it that there's nothing technique wise that's keeping him from getting better with the putter, and like that's part of where I was coming from. And his dad being a PGA pro, I was just kind of thinking like, well, he probably knows the technique or is getting good guidance so that he can get better. But totally agree with you. Big caution there. Cannot trust the golfers with amazing swings. I was really high on Cameron Davis in part for that reason, and that has not aged well. So he looks the part.
All the Camerons. Okay, Joseph, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. You can check Joseph out, Fried Egg Golf. Is it Fried Egg Golf? I know the company's Fried Egg Golf. It's still thefriedegg.com though.
Yes, correct.
Okay, thefriedegg.com, Fried Egg Golf. Get their newsletter, follow their Instagram, follow Joseph on everywhere, Twitter, Instagram, everywhere else. Thanks for your time, Joseph. And appreciate you coming on.
Thanks, Kyle. It's fun.